Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and today is Tuesday, December 22nd. So, another big day of momentum in the market. This is coming out of the small caps, and it's been this way for a while now at this point. So we'll kind of break down some of these moves. I was listening to CNBC before I started the video, and was listening to Michael Santoli, which I like a lot on CNBC, and just kind of talking about how the option volume as well as the momentum in the small caps right now, and I mean it's pretty amazing. And at this point, I've been trading for a long time, and I'm going back to when the where I would compare this now at this point, considering this swing that we've had, and I hate to do these comparisons, but I would say you got to go back to like the dot-com bubble, in terms of the areas that are seeing this, and again, it's not, you look at the performance of the indices today. S&P was essentially flat. The Qs were up, slightly for the day, up 27 basis points. Dow stocks were down for the day, but it's really happening in the smallest areas of the market. Some of the under-owned stocks, names with some short interest to them, and I just see a lot of names that are up 15-20%, no problem, no news, no problem. Just the amount of speculative call activity. So it's been really fun to trade, and I think the $1 million question is how long is this going to last? And I don't, no one has the answer to that. So we'll kind of go over a couple things in here. But yeah, here's the moves for the small caps, up another 1.1%. Clearly doing something different than the rest of the indices. If you look at IWC as well, which is your micro cap ETF, that's also up 1.1%. So your smallest companies right now are just crushing it. And a lot of the newer names, the SPACs, just anything that has to do with clean energy in general. If we kind of go through, just to kind of go through the rest of the summary here, but again, silver down on the day, gold down. VIX was actually down a little bit. Somebody asked me about that, because it is a little bit odd to see the VIX down and the market down. However, it's kind of it's negligible in terms of the the amount. The SPY only down. If SPY was down like 0.5% or 1%, and I would see something like this, then I would say, oh, it's a big deal. But this could have really flipped, by a small amount, and there was a decent MOC imbalance too that kind of moved things a tiny bit at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, clean energy stocks, and we're talking about after just a humongous move in clean energy, the percent move. Let's see, where PBW. So again, just looking at the overall group, right? You're just looking at the sector ETF first. What's the performance of this thing so far year to date? I mean, it's up close to 200. It's up close to 200% year to date in 1 year. And the solar ETF, if you want to just look at the solar names, up 224%. I mean, unreal. The trend in these things. And I feel like I've gotten into the solar names very early. This has been a name in the TTG trend portfolio, I think, since we started the portfolio. Yes, I wish I would have added the clean energy ETF too, which I thought about doing about 6 months ago and just didn't do it. Thought I had enough exposure in the solar ETF, but these are just it's just crazy numbers. And then you look, after the run that they've been on, just adding another 7%. Remember, we talked about this group yesterday too. This was on the top of the leaderboard too. So, how much more insane could it get here? I don't have the answer to that. Let's just look at these. First of all, let's go over the index charts very quickly. Not really much to we won't spend a lot of time here because we know that yesterday the line in the sand here is 3,640. So if you're not just trading clean energy stocks and SPACs and all the high momentum names, 36.47.5 is really a good level to watch. That was a level that we talked about yesterday morning, saying it had a hold. It held there beautifully, back in the beginning of them, or right around the 10th, 11th of the month. So again, the market value is doing. Excuse me, I can't speak today. The value areas are doing a great job, kind of telling you what's going on here. Now, if we break below 36.47 and a close, this was an intraday move, then you've got something to worry about in terms of the overall S&P. The Qs, notice that the Qs are not overbought here, right? In terms of like the relative strength index, the RSI, that's kind of how I measure, overbought, right? You could see that we're basically like a 67. Interesting that you've got a little bit of a negative divergence here. The RSI made a high back on 12.8. With that, with the price breaking out to new highs. Notice here, just the other day on the 17th when we made a new high, the RSI did not. So some people look at that in terms, and they call that a negative divergence. The negative divergences are, in my opinion, so I'll give you my I'll give you my take on that. We see a lot of these negative divergences, when the market's breaking out. Yes, there's something to kind of pay a little bit of attention to. It's more so on the negative side when price is making a new low and the RSI doesn't. It's a little bit more reliable. Again, it's purely my opinion for this stuff, but yeah, it's you do want to see the RSI confirm the price breakout. So that's the only thing that I'll say in the Qs. Moving on to the star here. IWM, 75 RSI. It's remained overbought here. We had this little bit of a move back yesterday, but again, one of the things that I think I talked about in Friday's video is the 5-period moving average. Price is staying above it. So the trend is in place until, go back to the old saying, the trend is your friend until it's not, right? So, you could have said back here, oh, we're overbought, right? And I'm going to get out of the market completely, right? And then you would have missed on this leg. So, when does this stop? I really don't know. And I've said this now a couple times. So it's a question for you as a trader to, basically manage your risk in this, right? What I try to do, and again, this video is for information purposes only. I'm not giving out any advice or recommendations, but I feel like I'm like Debbie Downer a lot of times because, rather than talking about this name or that name going up 20% today, which I'll talk about some of those names, really it is a bit of a struggle to me to say, how much longer can you stay in this market? It's a little bit of a challenge seeing so many things kind of just extend and go to the upside. So what I try to do, and I'll tell you what I'm doing in this market, but it's basically one of those things where eventually the price is probably going to come into the 20-day moving average. But again, just don't know where that's going to happen. So it's in the hands of a trader, how long you want to stick with this trend and how much exposure you want to have as we continue to go higher. The other thing to note is previously I've talked about this move in IWM, how it made a very similar move, post the 2016 election. However, this is now a much bigger move, right? This was the move after the, right, I think, where am I here? I think here, right? This move. Right? This was a huge move after the 2016 election. Look at the size of the move now. Right, so that was a big move, big outperformance in small caps, at the end of 2016 after that election and going into the end of the year, and then what I think into January, right? No, just to the end of the year, and that kind of then it kind of stopped for a bit. I mean, this is such a bigger move at this point. So that said, how am I kind of handling this market? I'm trying to basically, I'm taking more off the table. So I've kind of made that stance in yesterday's video, and it's the same thing. I'm moving as we get more into the end of the year, and I know people are kind of thinking about that Santa Claus rally, which is officially like the last week of the year. I'm not holding out for that. I think that we've had such a crazy market here the last couple of weeks. So again, it's a little bit of, take more money off the table and, participate. And I'll tell you, some the way that the momentum in this market right now, you don't have to have a ton of swing trades on if you're not feeling like you want to hold that much exposure. The intraday moves right now are crazy in some of these things. So we'll talk a little bit about the so the one name that comes to mind, which I put on I'll talk about this trade too, but I mean, look at this, right? This thing closes on the absolute highs today, up another 25%. So this is a move from $25 to 62. Now, yes, you may like the business, right? And of course, that's the counterpoint, right? I understand it's a flashy type business right now. They're doing something different. They've got a streaming business. However, is it really that great? And that's the thing that you kind of have to ask yourself with all of these stocks, right? Are they curing cancer by streaming videos? Or like, that's what I always come back to. So, yes, if you're catching some of these things, unbelievable, right? This is one of them. If you look at the whole, some of the move, how many names were up? Like Blink was up 28%, LAC was up 21%, Fuel Cell, which I own a little bit of Fuel Cell. Workhorse is another one. Like if you want to play a little bit of Workhorse, it's been asleep here for the last couple weeks. And if you look at this, so you got some resistance at 24.56. Right, it's a $24 stock, right? So you don't have to mention with call. You don't have to bother with calls. I know a lot of people are hooked on the options with these names, but I like the base in this one. And you could kind of set your targets, put a stop in. Maybe around 22.50, or if you have more tolerance than that, if you've been taking profits, on the way up, you could set your stop down to 21.60, and try to get 25. With some of these things, and 24.56 is the resistance there. LAZR is another one. This was actually in our weekend watch list. This one, only up 6% for the day. Damn, what a disappointment. Right, but you kind of get what my sarcasm. The one that I talked about yesterday, VLDR, was up another 11%. It hopped over that version point of control. So again, with these things, I always show these version point of controls. Price can get above them, especially if there's major volume like that. But so yeah, there's a lot of this momentum. Just to kind of talk about a few other names. I didn't talk about any of the solar names. CSIQ. Pure another breakout. I mean, up 11% in CSIQ. Heavy call volume that we talked about earlier. I was in run. I took my profits in this one. I know, only up $3, only up 4.7%, but just pretty amazing. Blink, of course, is another one. Up 29% in this one today. What's the other one that I'm thinking of? Not Blink, but Fuel Cell's the one that I took another target in today. Plug Power. So every once in a while I draw a blank, but another one up 11%. So just to kind of give you an example of some of these things, one name that I'm watching is Space. Again, makes no money, but it's a theme to play right now. It's a story stock. You could trade this one. So here's one. If you wanted to be, disciplined, you could trade this versus say 23.90 or that 50-day moving average and give this one a shot. I mean, a heavy call volume in this one. And then if we go back to the software space and the cyber space, I mean, look at this crowd is up to 225. I own this thing. I don't show this all the time, but here's what, my positions look in this. I refer to this TTG trend portfolio. Here's the 34 names that I have in it. The last few names that I added were apps, which is up about 24% in a couple weeks. What else did I add recently into this one? Um, Pure Storage, I added, even though I've got this one on in a swing trade as well. You could see I took a profit in this one at the end of the day. This was a name I put on a couple weeks ago. Vive. So again, we can go up and down with these. Cyber. Cyber saw more calls today. The name's up another 11%, another, huge breakout. So man, there's a lot of money to be made with the giant, ginormous moves. And again, here's an example of like you don't even need to stay in this stock. It went from 150 to 162. It's a huge move, right? And an even bigger move over the last, couple days from like sub 130 up to 162 in just a matter of a couple days. Vive, I think this is a good setup, so I stayed in this one. I was in some January calls today, again for a day trade. Took them off at the end of the day and rolled them into a little bit of February calls. Sam is another one, right? Outside of these spaces, but nice first break of the value area today, right? So this one could possibly run, right? So again, here's how I'm playing with some of these things, right? I put on a call spread, right, where I could, where it's juiced, in terms of if it runs, I can get a double or triple out of that one, right? Shop, I went on Bloomberg last week and talked about a call spread in Shopify. This thing is out 6.7%. This was a 1220, right? I believe that's what my right. Here's what I talked about on Bloomberg: 1200, 1220 call spread, January 8th, 760. It's marking at where's this thing marking at? 1365 in a matter of a couple days. I was just on, towards the end of last week talking about this one. So that's these are nice ways to talking about like a $1,270 stock. Call spreads are nice ways that you can participate in this market a bit. Hubs, right? So took off the majority of this trade. This was a trade I put on Friday, right? Up another 2% and a nice breakout there. I got out of U again. This U is a very volatile name, so I took this one off today. So again, not being like super greedy. Could this go up and maybe it goes up 7% one day? But for me, catching this thing on the turn and taking profits here, that's a great trade. So that's how I'm being right now in this market. I'm not being super greedy with every trade. Realizing I've got nice profits, taking them off, and being overall just realistic about this market, right? Just trying to trade smart. So putting on some things that where the options are expensive using call spreads. The question begs too. I started to get a couple questions about some of these names and playing the other side. Buying puts in some of these things if you think they've run too far. Now, number one, I'm a trend trader, so I stick with the trend. However, every once in a while, I will try to play, a counter trend trade when something gets to be like a 90 RSI. So I did that with this trade. I did put on a small put position in this one. The way that I would think about that, kind of a different topic for me to talk about on these videos, because I really stick with the trend. I try not to fade moves. I try to stay with the moves for as long as they last. But that said, that's the ability of options if you size them appropriately. If you're looking to fade any one of these moves, again, I can't tell you what to do. But for me, I would not get in front of some of these moves. And if I were to do it, which I did it small on one trade today, you have to really make sure that you're defining your risk. And not getting overexposed and trying to fade one of these moves. It's very dangerous to try to do that with the amount of momentum that's in this market. So just keep that in mind. It's okay. A trade is a trade. You put something on. Whenever I put on a short-term call position or put position, short-term options, right? I don't use stops. Right, I'm in either the trade's going to work or it's not. When I say short-term options, anything less than 60 days, right? Now, the way some people don't like that at all. The reason why I do that, why I don't put stops on short-term trades is just because they're too volatile, right? And if you stop yourself out, you're not giving your trade a chance to work. But the counter of that is some traders, they don't like to lose the whole premium on the trade. Well, how you handle that is you size it appropriately. If that's too much for you to lose, then you don't do the trade, right? That's the bottom line. But I would rather put on a small trade and stick with it for more than a couple hours, right? And see if your idea works. The whole thing is don't put the trade, only put on this. So if you put on a trade for $5, right, premium, right, you have to be comfortable with losing $500, right? Because that's what it is per contract, right? If you put on a 3 lot or a 4 lot, you have to be comfortable with losing $1,500 or $2,000 on that, on giving a trade a chance. Now, if you're not comfortable with that amount, then you don't do the trade. But trying to put on a trade and say, oh, I'm going to stop myself out if it goes to from $5 to $4, you're not giving yourself a chance for the trade to work, right? So you don't do that trade, right? That's the bottom line, right? With the type of option trading. So again, because what will happen sometimes if you put on a trade, and as soon as you click the mouse, 10 minutes later, the stock just moves, a little bit away from you. The option price could go from $5 to $3, right? What are you going to do? Stop yourself out because you got unlucky for 10 minutes? No, you keep the trade on and realize the $5 is your risk, right? That's your stop, right? So it's a good question. I think this gets lost amongst newer traders. It's something that I've learned over time. Now, if you don't like that principle, that's how I've gotten accustomed to trading options, right? For anything. Now, if I put something on for if I go out to, let's say, March, April, May, in options, I could use something like a 40% stop in the option price, right? But to stop yourself out every time there's a small increment in change in the option price, you're going to lose. It doesn't work that way. And I could tell you from all the years that I've tried to trade different strategies and options, but you can't stop yourself out of a short-term option price if it goes down $1. You're going to find that you're stopping yourself out of a huge amount of trades, and the winners are not going to make up for the losers. So the conclusion of this little session here of this, with trading short-term options is only put in with something as soon as you click the mouse. The way that I look at it is I'm on the hook for that $4 or $4 in option price. And again, if not comfortable with that $4 or $5 as your trade, then do not put that trade on. Okay? So that's my little lesson with that. So yeah, if you're thinking about fading any of these things, only do it with the size that you're willing to. Once you click the mouse, that you're at risk for that. That's how I do it. Again, everybody does it a little bit different. That's how I've gotten it to work for me. But you could maybe different for you. But some people try to day trade these things really, really quick, and they're good at it. If you're good at it, then don't change a thing. But I try to kind of go over some of my experiences with this stuff. All right, so what else? What else am I some other trade setups? We're about 23 minutes into this video. But, it's one of these things, too, where you can't take every single trade. These are some of our trade setups. I thought it was interesting that there were some Google calls today, right? We haven't really heard too much. Apple's been in the spotlight, but there is some December 31st calls. Notice that Google's at the 50-day moving average. Might be worth a shot. I did not take the trade. There was also a little bit of positioning in Amazon December 31st calls, but on a smaller basis too. Amazon's sitting right here. Again, just doesn't have the momentum. It's one of those things where you set the alert, set it and forget it. It's got to break over 3,230. I bring this stock up because I always get questions on it. Pins finally saw some option activity today, so it's above this level of 72. This perhaps could get going here. I like the consolidation. All this kind of bottled up or coiled coiling, right? That's pins has been going sideways. So I've been long pins for a couple weeks, probably somewhere in here, and I'm looking for this thing to break out. Sometimes you don't hear me talk about it too much if I've got a position on. What else did we talk about? AMD, interesting that the semis, right? I talked about the semis a little bit, how they made this big run a couple weeks ago, have stalled out and have been very, very quiet since. I think Skyworks got going a little bit today, but still didn't close on the highs. AMD, which is, gets a lot of attention on Twitter. I like the double hammer in here now. As long as this is holding the 20-day moving average. I started a position today in AMD. I like buying AMD on the dips, right? Chasing an AMD, very, very difficult. But buying the dips, into the 20-day moving average has worked in the past, so I tried it again today. We talked about a couple of these other names. Cloudera isn't really a name for me. I think it worked. If you day traded, it was up 13%. Why doesn't it work for me? Well, if you look at the chart in Cloudera, every time it does one of these big moves, it fades hard. So I stay away from this name, but a lot of calls in Cloudera today. All right, guys, I could go through like another 20 names that saw option activity today. We'll end it here for now. And guys, have a great night. Bottom line is this has been an amazing market to trade. I'm sorry to be Debbie Downer sometimes in these end of day videos, but I just want traders to realize, how much they've gotten in the market, and that once this momentum does flip, which it will, right? That this market can't go up forever. There will be some short opportunities too on the downside, but we're not, when that stops, I have no idea. Until then, party on. Have a great night.